compliment about eloquence. That certainly means a lot coming from such an experienced and accomplished speaker as yourself. So thanks. There was a lot that was discussed that I don't think we came here to discuss, so I'm not going to address specifically things like the efficacy of prayer, certainly all the political issues that were mentioned, and certainly not scriptural exegesis or Christian history. While I would obviously be pleased to engage in another debate about those issues, and I think they're important ones, we came today to talk about God's existence, and I'd like to mention a few of those issues. One is that Dan started out by saying I didn't give any evidence for God's existence. Now, I know you all know this, but let me just repeat very clearly. The way an argument works is you start from something that is immediately known, and you proceed to something that is not immediately known. That's the way every argument works. And what is immediately known, that counts as evidence. And it is immediately known that being is that which is, and non-being is that which is not. It is immediately known that we have moral convictions. And it is immediately known that things exist and they don't have to. And that's the source. That is the evidence which led us to the fact that God exists. There was just one small point. Dan mentioned if someone had proven God's existence, they would have won the Nobel Prize. I looked this up, actually. The Nobel Prize was first given in 1901. So the problem was, poor Thomas Aquinas and Anselm and Blessed John Henry Newman, they were all dead before they could get their Nobel. It doesn't really undermine the validity of their arguments. It's kind of like saying, well, Darwin must have been wrong because the poor guy died right before getting that award. It certainly doesn't undercut any of their arguments or their contributions. I didn't give a definition of God, seems strange to me, because I said he was a necessarily existing source of existence, that he was perfect. I don't know which of those words don't work, and that he was moral and good. I mean, those all sound like positive words to me. Dan mentioned that a lot of theists disagree about God. Well, as I'm sure a lot of you know, a lot of literary critics disagree about The Tempest. I've read it. I think there's about 1,000 critical essays regarding Shakespeare's plays, The Tempest, what it's about, what the point of it is, who it was written for, when it was written, even who it was written. So, going on the idea that if you disagree about something that doesn't exist, we have to throw The Tempest out. The Tempest must just be a delusion. But obviously that's not true. Disagreement is not the measure for existence or non-existence. God doesn't know the future. I think you'll find that the more philosophical theists you read, the more they're in agreement that God exists in an eternal present, which means he doesn't really have a future. He just has a continual now. He is eternal, which means present at all time at once, which means he doesn't have to see ahead. So there isn't really any conundrum with regard to God's knowledge. And technically, whenever you hear an objection based on divine foreknowledge, know that that's an imprecision in speech. God has knowledge of what he sees now at all times. All right, the second speech, the rebuttal, I think it's pretty clear that the phrase, the triangle is blue, or the blue triangle is blue, is a really different phrase from the three-sided triangle is three-sided. The blue triangle is blue may be true, but it's not necessary. It might surprise us, really, it is blue. Whereas if someone came and said, the three-sided triangle is three-sided, we say, well, no kidding. Because that's a necessary truth, based on the factual reality, based on the real essence of what a triangle is. You see, there's a big difference, and everybody knows it, between essential features and non-essential features. Dan tried to pretend that wasn't a valid distinction. I don't see how you could say that, because otherwise you'd have to say that the statement, the blue triangle is blue, is exactly of the same quality as the statement the three-sided triangle is three-sided, and that's obviously false. One gives us new information about what is factual but not necessary. The other gives us information about what we already knew, just by understanding the words we're using. Okay? So, And that was it. I think that was his only objection to my first argument, so I have nothing else to defend with the first argument. So, it seems pretty sound so far. I didn't say infinite things couldn't exist. I never said it. That was the other objection. That was the only other objection, was that I said that God is infinite, but I also said infinite things couldn't exist. I never said infinite things couldn't exist. I said if you say there's an infinite quantity of things possessing a non-essential feature, that doesn't explain where the non-essential feature present in that infinite quantity of things came from. You see? And that's a very different point. Both of those points are valid. We've proven that being must be infinite. I didn't hear any disproof of that argument. And we've proven that the non-essential feature of existence of however many things are on the universe, whether finite or infinite, requires an explanation that can only be provided by a necessarily existing source that we call God. Finally, Miravalle, how am I doing on time? I got 2 minutes, let's try it. Certainly, first of all, certainly, you can live on your moral convictions and ignore God. The way some college students I hear, I'm sure none of you, live on their parents' credit card and ignore their parents. It's certainly a possibility of human life. It's just very inconsistent. So too, an atheist can live on the moral convictions that come from God and yet ignore God, or be ignorant of God. My kids live on, I have little kids, and they live on meat and vegetables, and they don't know anything about butchers and farmers. I don't even know if they know they exist. They will know they exist as they mature, which is why I think theism is such a more mature way of thinking and way of living than atheism. Minimizing harm. Minimizing harm. Come on. I have 1 minute left. Minimizing harm doesn't answer the question of why we know not to do bad things. It just rephrases it. Dan says, the way we know not to do bad things is that we know to minimize harm. Well, that's just saying the same thing 2 different ways. The way we know not to do bad things is that we know to minimize harm, which just means bad things. Right? And I'm asking, how do you determine what counts as a bad thing? And there's been no evidence offered for any alternative source that is even conceivably possible besides a transcendent moral source. And by the way, harm isn't just physical. Harm can also be transphysical. When I'm afraid in my public speaking, I'm not afraid you people are going to bite me if I do a bad job. I'm afraid of these abstract notions like shame and failure, which I'm happy to say it doesn't seem is happening so far. So thanks so much.